What is the use of accept versus accept, one with an E and one with an A?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, this one maybe is a little bit more clear than the example that I looked at yesterday. And that has to do with the fact that each of these words, accept and accept, that is to say accept with an E and accept with an A, have pretty distinct meanings. So the only so yesterday, excuse me, we talked about the difference between affect with an A and affect with an E. And the really tricky thing about distinguishing between affect with an A and affect with an E is that the meanings are kind of close to each other, and you could be forgiven for easily confusing one or the other, although obviously not forgiven on something like an SAT exam or a test in your English class. In the case of accept and accept, each of those has, I would almost say they have opposite meanings from each other, and so it's going to be rare that a person is writing, and as long as they understand the difference in meaning between each one, that they're going to be unsure of which to use. Yesterday in our example, it was definitely possible for somebody to be confused about which they would use, even if they did understand the meaning of each. So I think along with this, I'd just also like to mention that Google has a lot of amazing tools that can help you with English stuff. So if we could jump to my screen really quickly, one of the easiest things that you can do if you're ever curious about just the definition of a word is literally just to type it into Google. If it's anything more than a simple word, one of the first things that should probably come up is the definition, and then you can even broaden this thing down and get more information like translations, origin of the word, et cetera, et cetera. You can even see usage of the word. There's a graph down here that'll show usage of the word over time. So Google will check texts back to, I don't know when, maybe they go back even further than this, but they'll check text back over a certain time and see if that word that you're talking about existed in literature, or when it existed in literature, when it was being used. So let's just look briefly at and let me just, I'm going to unexpand this really quickly. Let's just look briefly at the difference in definition between accept with an A and accept with an E. So accept with an A gives us two definitions here. We have consent to receive, so being okay with receiving something, or coming to believe something, coming to recognize something. Accept with an E, as defined by Google, the two major definitions are going to be, or the major definition really is going to be just not including, or not being included. And one of the reasons that these words sound so similarly, and this is the case not always with words that sound similarly, but it's worth looking into. Oftentimes words that sound similar or have a part of them that sounds similar have the same root. And I'm a fan of thinking about word roots because I think that if we learn basic word roots, we can often predict the meaning of words that we don't know. So again, one of the cool things that Google will do for us is it will give us etymologies. So an etymology is essentially the origin of the word. Etymology is the study of the origin of words. And so like if I took a word like dragon, right, I might want to know like where did that word come from? Why do we use the word dragon to describe, fantastical leathery beasts that breathe fire? In the case of accept, you can see from this chart that accept is a combination of it's a Latin word with a Latin prefix put on it. So ad, which means to, and as a prefix, and capere, which means take. And so asapere would have been the verb, or I think I think it's asapere, so how you'd say it, maybe oxapere, I'm not sure. But that would be to take something to oneself, and then you can see how that form of the word becomes acceptare, and then eventually accept in Middle English, and then it's been around. And again, earlier we saw on that chart that accept has been around, has been in significant usage since the 1800s. So again, this idea that what accept really means is it comes from the idea of to take, like to take something, like an object, or to take a belief onto yourself. Okay, and then if we look at accept, you'll notice that accept has the same core root, capere, but then it has the prefix out of, which is ex. And we can think of, and this is pretty obvious, right? Like we hear ex as meaning out of in lots of ways. Like you hear it in the word exit. You hear it in the word exoskeleton, which refers to a skeleton on the outside, like insects have on the outside of an organism's body. And in the same way, this becomes a Latin verb, essapere, and then it becomes accept in late Middle English. And so you can see that what we're talking about here is two opposite forms of taking, like taking something out of or taking it to yourself. Those are sort of the crude ways to describe that difference. So let's just look at a few quick examples to get this difference. I put the definitions up at the top of the paper here. So again, except being, and I'll just highlight this guy in, let's say yellow because it's pretty. And then I'll put except with an E in bleu. So except in yellow there with an A, again, is to consent to receive or to come to believe or recognize. Except with an E is to not include. So we could think like in this sentence right here, I was blank to see you Boulder, right? Does it make more sense to say that I would be saying it was consented that I was received to CU Boulder, or I was not included in CU Boulder, right? And so in this case, and this is kind of obvious because we talk about this a lot with college admissions, but we would say I was accepted to CU Boulder. Another sentence I might use, I might say everyone I was close with went to CU Boulder, blank for Tom who went to DU. And in this case, I'm saying I'm not including Tom in the people that went to CU Boulder with me, so I would say except for Tom. And I'll just bold these two guys for us really quickly so that we can see that difference. Oh, cool. And then I thought I would just, let's look at that other definition of accept, right? Like accept also means to come to believe something over time. So we might hear a sentence like, after much discussion, he finally accepted with an A that I was right. Because again, that would be to come to believe something, not to exclude something or to not include something. And then down here, I was going to include the sort of not often used, but acceptable usage of accept as a verb. So we'll often hear something like a person was accepted from something with an E, as in they weren't included in it. So I came up with this sentence where I could say, I was accepted from the exam because of the high score I got on my essay, meaning I wasn't included. I didn't have to take the exam because of the high score I got on my essay. That last usage right there is definitely going to be probably one of the rarer usages or one of the least used compared to the ones we've seen here, but it's totally acceptable. And there I go using accept. So again, sort of like those words yesterday, accept and accept. I think I can say accept to try to have the word with an A, or accept to try to emphasize that E. But ultimately, we say these two words identically. There's really no difference in a normal person's functional usage of accept and accept from a pronunciation standpoint. We just need to be on top of understanding the meaning behind these words. As long as we know what accept with an A means and accept with an E means, it should be very easy for us to find the placement for them. So perhaps if you're just being confused, if you just can't remember which is which, this would be a moment when thinking about those Latin roots, like ex being exit, being out of, those Latin roots in these kinds of situations can really be helpful.
Which is which?
Which is which? We may never know, honestly.